Hello everyone, this is Ohio Dan. I wanted to sort of reluctantly give a post-mortem on this 2020 presidential election. And I guess you can't completely call it a post-mortem because it is still sort of alive. It's just clinging on to life still. But for the most part, the 2020 election is over. And it's just a matter of sorting things out and figuring out what actually went on and where things stand going forward, if you want to call it that. This is a video that I'm probably going to split into two parts, and I don't normally like to do that, but there are two kind of specific points that I want to make here. In this first part of the video, I'm just going to talk about my impressions, how I see people reacting, what I think is actually going on right now, my take in general on the election. The second part of the video is going to be on a more specific or a different specific topic, which is the Electoral College itself and kind of what the next step is and why it's relevant. Even after I say everything that I say in this first part, there's a little bit of a twist to this election that most people are not seeing right now. And I think it's because they're caught up in the election itself still, the results themselves still. They're not seeing something that could easily, although probably won't happen, when it comes time for the actual Electoral College to meet and what could go on there. So that'll be the second part of this video. In this part of the video, I just want to talk about, like I say, my general impressions. So what was I right about in terms of my previous videos and predictions, and what was I wrong about? Well, you could say that to an extent I was wrong in the sense that the polls really were off by quite a bit, way more than they were in 2016. And especially if you look at the popular vote, where I said, if Biden is up by 6 to 8 points in the overall popular vote, you're not going to make that up in the Electoral College in all likelihood. If you're that far behind, these key states are going to vote against you. And it turns out that no, Biden didn't win by 6 or 8 points. He won by more like 3. And it may end up being, 3 to 3.5 points that Biden wins by in terms of the popular vote. And I don't even like to use that term, win, because, in order to win, you really have to have more than 50% to say someone wins the popular vote, in my opinion. But that point aside, there's probably going to be somewhere between 3 to 3.5 points difference, I would predict, in the final popular vote tally. So that is way off from what most of the polls were saying. But in the end, where I said, hey, I don't think Trump can win this election, it looks to me like the evidence basically says Trump is really the underdog in this election. Even though Trump supporters don't think that and they think he's going to win for sure, if the polls are even halfway close to being right, Trump is not going to carry these key states that he carried in 2016. And it looks to me like, guys, that turned out to be true. That the end result was what I thought it would be. And I don't take pride in saying that. I'm not trying to be like, I guess everything right, or I know everything that's going to happen, but I could kind of see this coming. And a lot of people that watch this video, they may not like what I have to say, because a lot of Trump supporters watch my content. They may, want a thumbs down and unsubscribe because they don't like my take on things. And, I don't like that, but I'm just going to tell it like it is. It looks to me like Trump has lost this election, at least for the way that it stands now, at least in terms of, it looks to me like he's gotten beat badly in Michigan, Wisconsin. Biden has a significant lead, and so on and so forth. Now, I want to talk about the reaction, and this is one of the other main things that I focused on in my previous videos. How are the Trump supporters going to react? What is the reaction going to be if and when Trump loses? And unfortunately, I think we honestly have a worst case scenario here. If Biden had won, it dominated the election, which he didn't, and won by 6 to 8 points in the popular vote, Trump supporters would probably maybe be more ready or more prone, I guess, to saying, hey, it looks like Trump lost. Because it's so overwhelming, and the election looks like it clearly went this way, that it's hard for us to say that America didn't elect Biden. They may not frame it that way. They may be more sort of begrudgingly accepting it, or just really saying, hey, we probably got cheated, but it's so one-sided that, it looks like Biden's won. That's not what happened. Trump made it so close, or he made it close enough that they're able to basically deny that he's lost this election, and Trump himself denies that he's lost. And again, people may not like me framing it that way, but that's the way that I see this. It looks to me like it's very close in some states, but not close enough that you can really say that Trump, unless Nevada ends up swinging the other way by the time I post this video, or something like that happens. One of my main concerns was, how are the Trump supporters going to react if and when Trump loses? And we could see that a lot of the hardcore Trump supporters are just making general statements that, oh, Biden cheated, the Democrats cheated. And this is the next point that I want to get to. If Trump got cheated, let's just say that that's the case, making general statements or saying, oh, this person over here said that these ballots were illegally placed or illegally made, that's not going to get it done, guys. The Supreme Court, and some people they seem to assume the Supreme Court can just give the election victory to one person or another. The Supreme Court is not going to do anything more other than demanding a recount or delineating the terms in which the recount has to take place. Saying, okay, these specific ballots may be invalid, but they have to be invalid for a particular reason. It can't just be, oh, we got cheated because our candidate lost. And that's a lot of what I see from Trump supporters. And that's what I was afraid of, because a lot of the Trump supporters, they just believed that he was going to win no matter what. And so they don't have specific proof that I've seen that certain ballots need to be invalidated. And it has to be specific, and it has to be for a particular reason. It can't just be, this person over here said they cheated. It can't be that. And unless you can present that sort of specific evidence to a court, that's going to be admissible evidence that is specific and concrete, you're not going to get anywhere with this. All the Supreme Court is going to do is order a recount, maybe in Wisconsin, maybe in Pennsylvania, although, Trump has to win Pennsylvania in order for this to even be a conversation almost. And especially for the second part of the video that I'm going to get to. But assuming Trump hangs on in Pennsylvania and in Georgia, another state is going to have to get overturned somehow in the recount that they do, and I don't see that happening because, like I say, in Wisconsin, you're talking about over 10,000 votes. And that's probably the closest state. Now, you could say, well, that could be overturned, or it could turn out that, certain votes need to be invalidated, but you have to have hard proof for why that's the case. It can't just be, oh, Trump got cheated. It has to be, here's the specific case where he got cheated with these specific ballots at this specific precinct. And I don't see that happening. I think that's unlikely. It could happen. And then the Supreme Court would say these particular ballots have to get thrown out. Or maybe the state election authorities would say these particular ballots have to get thrown out. But I don't think it's going to make enough of a difference, and I don't think it's going to be successful. So, it's almost a worst case scenario where, in my view, the Trump supporters, they just were so sure that he was going to win. And like I said in my previous videos, it's like, there's strong evidence that that's not the case. It looks like Trump is actually a long shot to win this. It ended up being more of a contest, a much closer contest than what I thought it was going to be. But the end result is that it looks like Trump has lost in these key battleground states. I don't see how he's going to make up Michigan. He's way too far behind. I think it's like 250,000 votes. Maybe it's not quite that much that he's behind in Michigan. Wisconsin is a lot closer, but still, you're talking about tens of thousands of ballots that would have to get turned the other way probably. I just don't see that happening. So, you know, assuming that this doesn't pan out for Trump, this is not good. This is almost the worst case scenario, because it was close enough for Trump and his, core supporters to say, oh, we won, but it doesn't look like that's the way it's actually going to pan out. It looks like Biden on paper has won, and unless you have specific proof and evidence to change this, it's not going to change. I'm sorry to say it, but the evidence, it just isn't there, and you have to prove in a court that these ballots need to be thrown out. I don't see that. I see a lot of Trump supporters that are basically just wanting to deny the numbers because they don't like the result. And like I say, some people may unsubscribe or dislike this video and unsubscribe for me saying that. But I think, again, one of my major concerns was that there was this sort of, I don't know what the right word to use is, this sort of miscalculation on the part of the Trump supporters, that they just thought they would win no matter what. How are they going to react if that doesn't happen? Because it didn't look to me like it would. The election ended up being really close compared to what they thought it was going to be, but it wasn't enough, and now we're right on the edge, guys. It's like there's not enough evidence to overturn it, but the Trump supporters still insist that Trump won. I don't know what the end result of this is going to be, but that pretty much, I think, concludes the first part of this video. I'm going to leave it there. Like I say, all I can do is give my honest take on it. And my honest take is I was sort of wrong about how, the polls were saying that it would be a 6 to 8 point win. But in essence, I was pretty much, I was mostly correct. I didn't think that Trump would be able to make up that much of a difference, even if the polls were somewhat wrong, and they were. But he did not make up that distance in those battleground states. He didn't make up that difference in Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, possibly Pennsylvania and Georgia if they do go the other way, although it looks like he may hold on to those states. So, he did hold on to Florida and all that, but like I say, you can't just come at this with the approach of, well, Trump got cheated. You have to be able to show when and how he got cheated with hard evidence. Not just this person said this person said that, or the cheating was everywhere. It has to be a specific and provable allegation. And the only result you're going to get is throwing out so many ballots. And I don't even see the evidence to do this. So you're just going to have a recount. I think you'll have a recount in Wisconsin, probably a recount in Nevada, maybe a recount even in Georgia and Pennsylvania. Even if Trump wins those states, you may have a recount there as well. We're probably going to have that as a phase through this process, guys. If we're just going to do a recount in several of these states. But I don't think that it's going to make enough of a difference. Even if there's a slight discrepancy, unless the Supreme Court can say these tens of thousands of ballots in Wisconsin, just as an example, need to be thrown out because they're invalid, and they came from, a heavy Trump county a heavily Biden county or precinct, and all those Biden votes get thrown out. Unless something like that occurs, the Supreme Court's not going to be able to do anything. All they're going to do is order a particular version of a recount. They can delineate what that recount will consist of, but I don't think it's close enough for it to change over. I really don't. I could be wrong about that. But again, a lot of people may not like this video. They may not like me saying this, but from what I see, it's a worst case scenario in terms of how everybody is evaluating this, or the lack of evaluation, really, where you have these Trump supporters that thought that he would win no matter what. It didn't look that way, and it seems like it hasn't turned out that way either. It seems like the polls were wrong to some degree, but not by enough. And how this will develop, that's kind of what I want to get into in part 2, but there is something in the part 2 video that I want to show you guys where Trump could still win that people have not focused on yet, and I think it's really important to discuss the Electoral College and the process that they'll play in this. So that's part 2, guys. Again, you could say, oh, I don't know what I'm talking about, but so far, I was afraid that this would happen. that Trump would lose and that there would be all these accusations of cheating because everybody on the Trump side was so overconfident that he would win no matter what. And if he got cheated again, I voted for Trump. I wanted Trump to win badly. But if he got cheated, you have to prove it. You have to prove it in a way that is admissible in court. You can't just say, oh, Trump got cheated this whole time. Oh, this person said this person tweeted that. It doesn't matter. You have to have admissible evidence. And honestly, I don't think they're going to throw very many ballots out. I think they'll do these recounts. And I think Trump will still lose in terms of the tally for the Electoral College. But again, I want to get into that more for part 2. So for anybody that hasn't unsubscribed to me at this point, stay tuned for part 2 of this, where I'm going to talk about the Electoral College itself and what could go on with that process in more detail.